Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Infinite I Am global event, in which we will gather for powerful conversations with scientists, wisdom keepers, shamans, healers, intuitives, astrologers, visionaries, to bring a deep understanding of our relation to the divine, to all that is, has been, and will always be. This event is designed to open up space for all of us to remember the infinite and powerful light being that we all are, to acknowledge the sacredness of everything, to restore the ancient knowledge of living in oneness, to consciously honor our choice to incarnate in this moment of time and offer our unique contribution for recreating the indigenous way of living on Earth. Here you are invited to tune into the wisdom and the healing energy created in these conversations and experience your own deep transformation. I'm your host and the creator of this event, Veselka Nikolova, and today I'm really excited to present to you Elizabeth Wood. Welcome, Elizabeth. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you.
You were part of the last year's summit, Speaking the Language of the Soul, and some of our viewers know about you. So now I'm going to introduce you to those who are meeting you for the first time. Considered an advanced seer, Elizabeth Wood works on the cutting edge of galactic and quantum anthropology, trauma healing, and futurism. With her lifelong ability to see into and work with all dimensions, her theoretical and psychic work has helped people all over the world. Called Living Library and Oracle, Elizabeth has spent her whole life studying anthropological theory, quantum physics, ancient and modern medicine. She has 2 science degrees, including a master's in applied anthropology. Her philosophies and practices bridge science and spirituality to support real change in the world. Wonderful mission, I would say. So the topic of today's talk with Elizabeth is being versus doing, the end of identity and becoming the true you. So logically, my first question is going to be, what is the difference between being and doing? We are very familiar with doing because we're conditioned that doing and achieving and succeeding is the way to go through life. At the same time, being and the phrase just be must be misinterpreted as the opposite, just sit, do nothing, and attract possibilities and manifest this way. So could you tell your view to clarify, these 2 terms, being and doing, according to how you...
Well, it's actually very well illustrated in a pretty simple metaphor. But I want to give people clarity that when we're doing things in the world, we're doing in the 3D. And so we have this natural orientation that we have been guided to in our cultures and in what I might call like the matrix thinking, that we need to orient ourselves from the 3D. And we have not questioned this. Now, I realize a lot of people in our spiritual community, they'd rather go, for example, to the 5D or whatever. But my argument has always been that, the 5D is one of the most complex dimensions in consciousness. And that's not really where we would want to orient ourselves. The 5D is an arena of all possibilities. So where would we orient ourselves then if we're going to be versus do? Doing's a lot of work. And when you're doing, you're trying to survive most of the time. You're trying to make ends meet. You're trying to have better relationships. And there's a lot of trying and trying and trying. And so this metaphor to help us reorient ourselves naturally to a different place, which would be the first dimension. And that's the more appropriate and more natural spot for our consciousness to start from. But we have not been taught this. It's been taken away from us. No one has even talked about the first or second dimension hardly in consciousness. So people don't even know what I'm talking about. The cool metaphor is very simple. Your life is like a personal showing of a special movie, and it's a movie that you chose. It's not a movie that you knew a lot about necessarily, but it's a movie that you knew enough about to say, this is a life that's going to be worth watching, that's going to be worth doing, it's going to be worth being in. And so we have this projector with this big light bulb, and it's running all that light through a film. And that film is your genetic memory from your ancestors. It's your personal experiences, which are often repeats of your genetic memory, and much more. It's lots of different pieces. The ego, which is attachment and judgment and expectations. And it's a lot of information. And it takes that light and it distorts it in order to have basically a movie play out, a reality play out. And that plays through the body. So that light and that film moves through the body. And then the body is experiencing this film and it's being played out on what we would call a screen. But what is that screen? Well, the screen is source. If you didn't have source God, there would be no movie. So you have to have the screen. The screen is the stillness. It is source itself. And the beauty of it is that there really is a deep relationship between that light bulb and that screen that we end up learning more about later. But most of us are oriented from the physical body, and we're watching this movie play out as if we have no control over it. And so we have to try to do in accordance to that film that's being played out, that reality that gets played out. We're trying to do things that match that reality. And we start really early, of course, as children, because we have these cultures that we're immediately born into and conditioned to work in, to act in, to do in. Now, most people who end up listening to these summits, they would all say like, yeah, and that was not fun. It wasn't pleasant because I didn't feel like I could be myself. Right. So we always hear this from everybody says that to ourselves at some point on a spiritual journey. I couldn't be myself. And that's so key because that question remains unless we're willing to reorient ourselves to a different place. So the key piece is first, you are not your body. That is not you. That's a technology. Your physical form is a technology, and it has access to a lot of different realms of consciousness. Now, we could break it down to thousands of dimensions or just one, but the tradition that I teach in, there's 12. And that helps to break them down baby step by baby step. But really, we're looking at an open floor plan, an open reality, where your body is simply a part of that reality. So who are you then? If you're not your body and you're not the film being played, then who are you? Well, you are the light bulb in the projector. And when you start to recognize that if you can reorient yourself and you back up into that space, then the first relationship that you have is with your body. And if you're in a state of being, that light, which is a unique light bulb, It's a unique frequency. It's a unique energy. Each light bulb, each consciousness is unique. It's necessary in order to have this universe function. And this universe functions for novelty. People think it functions for love. No, it doesn't. Love is a cool part of our universe, but that is not why this universe exists. This universe exists to create newness, to create novel conscious experiences. And so that's very important to recognize, because then your existence itself creates novel experience in this universe. That's why you are so beloved in this universe. It's why humans are so beloved, because we're really good at creating new stuff. So that's why we're kept around despite all the sorts of things that could have wiped us out. And so if you reorient yourself, it takes some practice to back up and say, well, I am that consciousness light. I'm not the film. I'm not my body. I'm not the relationships I have. I'm not the work I do. I'm not the actions I take. I'm not even the thoughts that I have. I am first and foremost a source of consciousness. And it literally creates light. So it's very physical. It does that. And that's why human beings, when they do work on themselves, they become more light. You can see the light come out of their body more, literally. It's very physical. It's measurable. So when you reorient yourself as the light bulb, which actually is in the heart space, not in your head, and in the heart space, you're being that consciousness. You're not being your culture. You're not being your language. You're not being the name of your body. You're not being the name you made up or somebody gave you. You're none of those things. Then you begin to have a very different experience, because you're not doing you. You're being you. You're being that consciousness. And then you get to see that that film is actually very malleable. You picked it so you could learn a bunch of things and absorb it into the light that you are. Sort of like the screen absorbs the movie into it, and it seems to disappear, just becomes one with all things. But that light, it begins to move through, and it changes the way you think, it changes the way you speak, it changes the way you act in the world, because now you are your authentic self. And the first thing that changes is your body. Your body becomes more joyful. It's less effort to think and say and do the right thing in the divine will, is what we would call it. So when you're willing to back up past this physical experience, and if you want to get into a heavenly place, a heavenly state of mind, the fifth dimension is not where you need to go. You need to go to the first dimension, where you come from, that point in consciousness from the heart space where you enter into the universe. And then you have a very cool opportunity. You can sift through, and you ought to, because you picked this lifetime and you worked really hard for this lifetime. All of this is a pinnacle lifetime now. And so you get to look through the life and sift through it. And in mysticism, we call it recapitulation. So we recapitulate this life. We look through that film and we say, wow, it is true. I really have played out a lot of repeats that my other ancestors did already. Naturally, because that light was moving through their story, which then became mine. And this is very precious, because if you do that work and you're aware of all of that, then it helps to free your ancestry. It helps to free you from a history, from an epigenetic memory that you don't necessarily need anymore. But you gained it because it was useful. So you needed it because it was going to give you the next step in consciousness that you were looking for. So we treasure it. We don't want to keep it around. We don't want to play our light through the film, but we need to get to know it, just like we would a special book that we checked out from a very special library. It's a very rare book, and only one person is allowed to read that book, and it was you. So that's why we want to treasure our epigenetic memory. We want to treasure our trauma. We want to treasure our positive experiences and all of it. But it's not your identity. So what happens if you remove the film? Now you've got to know it. You're finished with the film. You've decided, I'm not my culture. I'm not my epigenetic history. I am not the language I speak. I am none of these things. I am not the degrees I have. I am not the failures I've had. And so we shift that. We give it back to source. And then what is playing on the screen? Then what's playing through your body? It's only one energy. It's your soul's light, which is source light. So then there's source light moving through the body and speaking through your body. Then there's source light moving through your eyes and your hands. There's source light on the screen, and then you're seeing God in all things. This is what Jesus often talked about. He said, I am the light, the truth, and the way. He's talking about you. He's talking about how to be. I am the light, which is showing me the truth that God is in all things. And that is the way for me to be in the world. It's really that straightforward. Now, is it easy? No, but there is beautiful efforts and work in lots of different ways to recapitulate your life, deal with some of those traumas in that film, understand it, objectify it, which is a positive word, to look at it separately from yourself and recognize it is not you. And then to fully become the subjective light that you really are. Then you start to see light in all things. Even the weird, dark stuff in the world, you can see the light because it's not separate from you. And you're being able to then play that true film, the one frequency that the world really needed in the first place, that is your awareness. And it's simply that. It all becomes light. And this has a profound effect on the body too, because the body is in love with you. The body's a symbiotic creature. It's mainly made of beings that are not you, that are not your own DNA at all, but have memory from billions of years, bacterium and wonderful little beings that help make you in this form, in this beautiful body. But those beings, they are in love with you. And they're not in love with your ego. They're not in love with your culture. They don't care about that. They like your light. They want your consciousness. And your body changes. You heal more quickly. You heal your relationships, the ones that are not necessary anymore, that are not going to continue to elevate that light, or are going to drag you into a cultural experience that is not appropriate any longer. Those will fall away. And so many things change. So the argument is the first dimension, the I am presence, the I am, which is a state of being, is the most important aspect of consciousness. All the other dimensions are completely revealed for their true nature if you're willing to back up all the way and become the light bulb in the projector, and not the body, not the 3D, not the doing. Because as much as you've strived in the 3D, you still feel disconnected. And it's not going to help you to go to the fourth or the fifth dimension or any other dimension except where you started from. And that's the most important. If there's any dimension of all of them that you must focus on, it's that one. Because not only is it the source of light from God that moves through you, but it's also your answer. It's also God itself. The first and 12th dimension are the same doorway, seen from two different sides. The 12th dimension is source direct. So are you. So this changes everything in the way that you function in the world. The doing, the 3D, the effort, the striving, the work, the trouble that we've had is going to disappear if you're willing to do this. And I think that that trauma piece is key to recapitulate, because trauma has a lot of density and it is very useful. It's full of incredible energy and power. But this is exactly why we've come, is to achieve this state where we can be the authentic self. And that's the highest of all frequencies in this universe, is the authentic self, not love, it's authenticity. So that's the difference between being and doing, the long explanation of it. You're muted.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's such a unique view. So many thoughts and questions in my head were running while you were talking, but it would never have crossed my mind to think that the first dimension is the most important, because we are talking about raising frequency, and it's always about the fifth dimension, which is considered to be the one of the higher self, of the soul. But it makes sense that everything starts from this point of creation, which is where we all come from. So this is the I am presence, and this is the oneness, because the I am presence is just the point of existence in the oneness of the whole creation. So just how can we make sense of the I am presence? Because you're talking about this light bulb, and then you're talking about the screen, which is God, but actually the light bulb is the part of this source. Is this the first and the 12th dimension?
That's right, because the film, the light, the experience can't exist unless there is the source. So these two things, the light bulb and the source, they have an intimate, constant relationship. And so I realize that people have tried to determine the fifth dimension, and that they think of the fifth as higher. And that's not true. There's no higher dimensions. They're not higher. They're more expansive. They're wider. But that point of light, if you took away all other possible consciousness, all other light bulbs from the universe, there would still be a universe, because that's the awareness of your soul. That awareness creates reality. It doesn't just create, whatever, it doesn't just create more of whatever you look at. You have full control over whether or not something lessens or gets greater in the field. But your light is so expansive, and the universe itself is the screen. Your light is so expansive that even without all other possible consciousness in this universe, the universe still exists because of your presence. So that light bulb is literally the power of source itself, but it's run through a unique frequency, because source has had to basically become a prismatic light in this universe. If source was its whole self, interacting with its whole self, well, then we would simply call that the void. The reason why universes exist is because source has split itself up into these differentiating frequencies, these qualities of light, these wavelengths of consciousness. And those wavelengths are what are having interactions with everything. Those wavelengths are what you are. You are one of those wavelengths. So you are of God. You're of source. Now, you could go deep inward and say, well, I'm going to ask the source inside of me, the answers. And that's fine. That's appropriate. But you could also ask the whole source field and the entire set of wavelengths. You could ask the screen and get answers too. It's not different. It's the same energy. And when we run that consciousness through dimensions, it simply expands until you recognize that you're not separate from the universe. You're not separate from everything around you. That's why when you let yourself become your true light and nothing more, nothing less, you don't feel like you have to work for the words. You don't feel like you have to do anything anymore that's going to be difficult, really. It's simply that it becomes. And I realize people aren't used to living like that. And it's because they're oriented in the 3D and they want to get out of the 3D. Fair enough, because that's where there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of consciousness under pressure, and there's time. And then we have a limited amount of time. One of the most beautiful elements of reality in the 3D is time. And so people then they say, well, you know what, we want to go to the fifth dimension. And this is coming from a whole mindset of what we would call ascension or trying to get higher. And so it makes sense that the number 5 is higher than the number 1. And so people have related it to that. But these understandings of that dimension have not come from appropriate lineages. I'm just calling it. They haven't come from lineages. They've come from people who are self-taught in consciousness. And part of what is going wrong in our spiritual work is that we aren't coming from lineages anymore. We're connecting with teachers who don't have a lineage. And those lineages have been established in consciousness for a very good reason. The teachers might not be perfect. They never are. They're human. But the lineages are key. And so this idea that the fifth dimension is higher or a higher frequency, that's not real. You are the highest frequency that can exist. You don't need to go seek it out. It's not beyond you. It's literally inside of you. And when you lay back into it, then you can see the open floor plan. These are not higher dimensions. They become more complex. The fifth dimension is one of the most complex dimensions there is. Complexity doesn't necessarily mean higher consciousness. And the first dimension is one of the most simple, and so is the 12th, but it gets into complexity and then it goes back into simplicity again. Because when you go past the fifth dimension into the sixth and seventh, those are very complex, and then you start to get more simple from the eighth onward. How do I know these things? These things were passed down to me. Plus, I've had literal, actual experiences with each of these dimensions and the embodiment of them, because my body, like yours, has 12 light bodies. They're all connected to each of these dimensions. You're already activated. You don't need anybody to turn you on. You need to be the light bulb, and then everything else turns on. The whole room becomes very clear if you get into the correct position. So that correct position helps you to recognize the truth, that this is an open floor plan of expansiveness for you to see God. That's the light playing on the screen. That is your soul. You don't need the film. You don't need the complexity. You don't need to know every possibility. You can if you want to. That's fun. You can learn a lot. You don't need to have angels and guides, and people love their angels and guides. That's fun too. I used to have angels and guides. I don't need them anymore because I work only with the source field. The source field is me. It's not separate. So I apologize, my cat is having an issue. But she's agreeing. She says, yes, we have to step back into who we truly are. So I believe there's some fallacies about the dimensions that I'm quite happy to give my perspective on. And I just hope people will, connect and see if it resonates for them. Whatever mindset is going to work best for them is whatever is going to work best. But this is the teachings that I've been directed to for some decades now. And then practicing them, it's very measurable. I can tell people exactly which dimension they have open and which ones are blocked and why. And why can I do that? Because I can see from my source self, from my own frequency, and my nature is to illuminate. So I don't have to do anything. I just naturally illuminate whatever's in front of me. That's the nature of my light. Each person's is different. And this is the beauty of it. Then we get to interact with source. And every single being, every single person has that light. We eventually then we go beyond trauma. because then you're interacting soul to soul, light bulb to light bulb. And that's incredibly enjoyable. There's far less drama and trauma when functioning from there. And you don't need to work so hard about thinking, saying, and doing what is correct, what is in divine authenticity anymore. There literally is no more work in that. You're not doing anything. You're being, and it's naturally coming through the different dimensions in the form of words, thoughts, and deeds, but they're all in the divine will. So that's my general argument for not worrying about the fifth dimension so much.
Yes, and what you're saying, so this is our true self, the light bulb, and all these identities that we have been given from birth, probably from conception, and all this trauma that we have accumulated in this lifetime, in past lives, and from ancestors, are in the way of this light to shine. So the aim, obviously, is to become more of who we are, and this infinite I am, the light bulb. How could you give us some steps? How can we actually move through this identity and trauma that distort our light? Because this is what happens. This light, we are not connected fully because the identity and trauma are kind of refract the light in a different directions, and it kind of colors in a different way, filters.
Yes, it distorts it.
Yes. And how to become more of this light bulb?
Good. So there's actually some really simple ways to work with this. But this is when we get into anthropology. There's a wonderful method in anthropology called the split page. And so start with this. And this will help people to change their mindset a little bit more and be able to begin the next steps. So there's 3 pieces I'll share here. First, do this split page technique. What you're going to do is you're going to have a journal and you're going to draw a line down the middle of a page each day. And at the end of the day or throughout the day, if you get a chance to, write down exactly what you are seeing around you. Okay, so I went to work and I saw people driving crazy. And then I saw, my boss was having a difficult phone meeting, and so she was really upset. And then I saw that my coworkers are, one of them's really having a great day, and the other 2, they weren't having a great day. And these are some of the things they said. And then on the other side of the page, how did it feel? What were you thinking? And is that your voice? So you're trying to delineate, is this my voice that's coming through or not? And so you're going to say, well, when that crazy driver cut me off or whatever, I felt angry, but I also felt aware that it was just a split second and it happened really quickly. And then there was a part of me that was at peace, that knew that I was safe. And are you the anger, or are you the part of you that knew you were safe, right? We have to inquire into what we're really experiencing and split the difference between the objective reality that's happening around you and then the subjective reality and what is really happening in your mind. Are the voices that are speaking, are the energies that are reacting, are they actually you? Now, eventually what this does to your brain is kind of cool, because then you can say, well, I went into the office and I knew that my boss was having a difficult meeting. And so I had an initial reaction of, oh no, I hope it's not going to be a horrible day today because she's having a hard meeting. But then I also had compassion. So I felt, oh gosh, I'm sorry for her. It's not a good way to start the day. with a difficult meeting, right? And then, oh, I see that one of my coworkers is having a great day. She's fabulous today, or he's fabulous today. And like, how did that make me feel? Oh, well, I felt all this energy and this joy come up from my heart. And I thought, how wonderful. I hope everybody can catch that vibe, right? So we're literally taking the time to very carefully watch how your inner world is working. That's you backing up, backing up, backing up past the film, because your soul is naturally knows it's safe because there is no death. Whatever would have happened on that highway, it still doesn't mean there's any death at all. It simply means there's change. But it didn't end up as death. It simply created a certain reaction, and that reaction isn't you. That reaction, you were trained to do that, because when your dad taught you how to drive that car, he would yell at the bad drivers. And so you picked that up and you thought that that's how you had to be. That's part of the film. But when you back up, you knew, your soul knew, that light inside of you knew that you were safe. That light inside of you knew that your boss needed some compassion. That light inside of you knew it was fun and good to connect and celebrate with your very happy coworker. That's your soul. And you didn't have to do that. You were that already. You had to do the anger. You had to do the confusion. You had to do the frustration. You had to do the fear that your boss was going to be upset. But that wasn't you. So you have to split your mind, and you get to see more clearly in this inquiry process about what's really going on from the inside. And that gives you a chance to look at the film. It gives you a chance to look at the reactions and well, of course I reacted that way with the drivers because my dad did, and that really scared the bejesus out of me. So now I'm always mad at bad drivers, right? That's just part of the film. Then the second step is take all of the energies that you're noticing inside of you, not necessarily the objective stuff that's outside of you, but look at the reactions very carefully. Because if you can keep noticing those reactions, those are some of the pieces that you need to learn most about that you brought in. Oh, I see. There's this anger energy. Are there other examples in my life where that's coming up? Do I have ancestors, perhaps my parents, like I learned it from my dad, to be mad at the drivers? Does that make it very clear to me then that, oh, this is part of the film that needs to be cleaned up. This is part of the distortion that happens in my reality because I learned it, and that was an imprint on the film. It's an imprint on the window that your light is moving through. And then that distorts it. It puts a Batman sign out into the world for more crap like that to happen, or for you to have distortions wherever you go. And that Batman sign, it's not necessarily going to bring forth heroes. It's going to bring forth weird events and difficult challenges because it's distorted, right? So now you have a chance to sit down and you start creating a list. You start creating a list of the different energies, these reactions. All right, this anger comes up and it's not comfortable. It doesn't fit my energy. It's not natural, but that natural feeling safe, no matter what's going on around me, that's who I really am. Now, you want to keep an eye on what are those reactions. And once you have that list, that's a great start. Most of them are learned, and or they come from your epigenetic memory. So now we're talking about genetic bondage, which is the bulk of what the distortion is when you run it through your experience. Now you have your list, and it's mainly stuff you don't want. It's a bunch of different reactions and learnings that you were taught over all these years. And now you need to understand the polarity that they're part of. What's the opposite of the anger at the bad drivers? Well, it's that trust. It's that inner trust that's more true to who you really are. What's the opposite of the fear that comes up when you see that your boss is having a hard time? Well, it would be a different kind of trust. It would be like a more compassionate trust that things are always going to work out, especially if you maintain your own light. And you can go through also your own life and look at some of the more traumatic events that happened to you. Perhaps you were sexually abused. What's the opposite of sexual abuse? Well, that'd be co-creative, sensual love, right? And so you want to look at both of those sides. You need to now know what are the dynamics here, what are the polarities. Now you have a list of polarities, all these reactions and negative pieces and traumas and dramas that have happened that you know are not you. And then you have the other side. It's the stuff you do want. It's the stuff you want to replace it with, because you'd rather be in that state of compassion all the time and not feel like you have to work at it. You'd rather be in a state of trust all the time and not have to use anger as a tool very often unless you really must. But to even know when that's the divine right time to do it is going to be from your soul, not from your cultural conditioning, not from your reactions. Now you have these polarities. Now it's time to do something very special that humans are very, very good at, and that we have really lost touch with, and we must reclaim because it's part of how you use your body technology. It's time to do a ritual. And so ritual's key. Rituals always existed, even on other planets. Ritual is key. Ritual is how you use your body technology. Ritual is how you use the intent of your soul to create reality. If you want to erase the film, then you need to do a ritual. You got to write all this down. Here's the chunk of stuff I don't want anymore. You create a sacred space, you burn it, you give it back to God, and you say, I energetically offer this back to Source to do with it as Source will, and make it into more beautiful, wonderful things for this world. And that's a great gift to give. That's a payment forward energetically. It's dense, these energies. That anger is really dense. The sadness, the grief, the traumas, they're dense. But you're paying it forward to Source and saying, this belongs to you. I don't need this film. I've learned this now. What I want is the expansive opposite part of this experience for myself and my lineage. And so then you're clearing your epigenetic memory. You can make the ritual religious, you can make it elemental, you can make it Christian, pagan, Hindu, whatever you want. Humans are great at this, and you can be super creative with your rituals. But once you're finished dissolving, then you got to replace it because you just got rid of a huge chunk of energy. Now you need to bring through the truest light from your soul. And you, from your soul, were the one who discovered on your own, what are those energies that are real? Well, that trust that I felt on the road, I'd rather drive like that. If I drive like that, then I'm going to end up having less experiences with crazy drivers. And then, you know, that compassion I felt, that was, I didn't have to work at that. That would naturally arose from me. The compassion I felt for my boss. Well, that's wonderful. I'd rather function from there. So I welcome that to come in and remain in my field. And that's your source light. That's your heart. That's your soul taking over and replacing all the density, replacing the film with the light. And then that changes your body, and it changes the physical, literal 3D experience you're having. And then when people say that if you can become more of your soul, you attract more stuff that's going to want to be around your soul. That is real, it's measurable, it's true. Then the next step, the last one that's very important, in order to open some of the most expansive, not higher, expansive dimensions, where you're getting more access to Source. In order to open those up, there is a point in time where you have to relinquish your identity. It's who you think you are. It's who other people have told you you are. And you must look at that doorway. It's a doorway energetically, and there's a sign above it, and it says, no one may enter here. Because up to that point, your identity was always doing. It's a garb you wear. You're wearing this robe and it says, I am an anthropologist and I have 2 science degrees and I am a mystic and I can psychically see cool stuff. This is me. That's not true. That's a cool outfit that you wear in order to navigate and make sure other people have access to what you thought was important. The truth is in order to get to the most expansive space of consciousness, you can't wear anything. You got to be energetically naked. And it says no one may enter here. You must become no one in order to be and not do. So you've got to sit down and do another ritual. You got to come up with all the things that you have been trying to become and do, right? I got to do anthropology. I got to get that degree. I got to be these things. I'm good at these things. I've owned these things. I'm a house owner. I have a cat. I have a goose, obviously, yelling in the background. All these things. But these are not you. And you start with your name. I actually had like this huge grief experience where I was like, I have to say goodbye to Elizabeth. And here, I'd always wanted people to know who I was. And I'm like, that's so heavy. That's chunky. Like, that's some serious identity for me wanting me to be known in the world or like famous or something silly like that, which now it looks so silly from my vantage point. I'm like, how funny that I wanted to take all this power and light and then smoosh it into this one little identity that's not really me at all. That's a lot of doing. That's a lot of work. So give it up. Do another ritual. Burn yourself at the pyre and say goodbye to everything that you thought you were, including your skill sets. So when I did this, I was guided to do it because I can hear source sometimes, and source said, it's time now. If you really want to get to this next step in consciousness, you need to relinquish everything you thought you were. And I went through a very deep ritual. It took me a couple of weeks because I was fasting. I needed to get my mind really clear. And so I could see very clearly then, oh my gosh, this is not me. I am not this body. I'm not all the things I've done. I'm not any of it. I am this light, and I need to be willing. I need to be willing to give up everything in order to expand. So I did. I gave up everything. I was willing to give up my career. I was willing to give up my relationships. I was willing to give up my psychic seeing, which is literally the bread and butter for my family. I was willing to give it up. And so by being willing, then we relinquish it through ritual, and you walk through a new doorway. And then instead of losing my skills, I gained access and I became the whole library. Instead of being somebody who worked in consciousness, who was constantly doing, I became it. Now I don't have to work for consciousness. I am it. I am the library. I don't need to have any sort of specific skill set. I know in my bio it says I'm a seer and an anthropologist and la la la. That sounds fun. That's cool. But that's not really who I am. I am all that light. I am the consciousness. I am the library. I don't have to run around and work for it. Whatever skill I need is exactly what I will be doing, if that's what source through me takes on. But it doesn't feel like doing. I, Elizabeth, am not making any choices like that. It's the source light through me. I don't have to make choices anymore. It literally is available and immediately in consciousness. There's no more distortion. I don't have to run it through anything. And if anything pops up, it's very clear that, oh, there's a trauma here, or oh, there's an issue here, or oh, I see this relationship needs to end. So I'm going to make sure that it's done with lots of grace and with the perfect knowing and perfect faith that it's going to literally turn out exactly in the divine will as intended. And that is this state of being that I'm talking about. And we can put a lot of words to it, but it is literally the difference between being and doing. And it is profound, but those are the steps that you must take. And you should take your time. You should take your time and intend it. Intend it through your body. Your body will help you because he or she really does want you. Your body wants you. Your soul's light, not the film. Your body wants you. It's in love with you. It wants to be you. That light, nothing more, nothing less. So those are the steps. And play with them, modify them, shift with them. Play, like you might want to do them more than once. I regularly go through and say, all right, what identity have I taken on lately? It's time to put that to the fire. And that's what it takes. And I think that people will find some very good results from those steps.
Yes, it looks like it, but it's a deep work. It's kind of, I was taking notes, and it's going through a deep inquiry. You have to be really willing and really invested into that. And as you said, taking the time to do that, because it's not like a one moment realization of what's going on. It's going very deep, like a deep inner investigation. And then what happens, I can see that all these lists that you mentioned is brought to light. Otherwise, they were hidden.
Yeah.
Kind of, and what happens? All these hidden things are running our life, all these patterns, rather than we consciously running our life through this light that we are. So it's a deep process. I would say it's a time consuming.
It's a lifestyle.
And then, yes, it's a lifestyle because we repeat it. And perhaps, would you say that when you do the first cleanup, I would say it like that, the first big cleanup that can take 2 weeks, the awareness shifts and we become more aware later on and kind of work much quicker through everything that pops up.
Absolutely. The awareness shifts almost immediately with the split page. There was a social scientist named Jane Addams, very famous sociologist, turn of the century. She was in Chicago, and she was the one who discovered this methodology. And when she would teach her students how to do it, their awareness would change super dramatically and very quickly. So that's why I encourage people to use this anthropological tool, because in anthropology, we're taught how to be as objective as you can possibly be, because you're a human trying to study other humans. So it's a very unique way of looking at things, but it does create a very different awareness. And then now you've stepped into, here's why people will want to do this. It sounds like a lot of effort. It's not as hard as it seems. And the shift in awareness becomes a lifestyle. And that lifestyle is mysticism. This is mysticism. This is being a mystic. And if you're dedicated to consciousness, and if you're really wanting actual happiness, not happiness that's tied to stuff that goes away, the endless happiness, the one that you keep hearing people talk about that seems totally elusive. This is the shortcut. This is a path that is measurable, that has been used by many, many people over eons, that's been passed down through a lineage, that is part of our reality still. It's relevant no matter what place in time or space you're in. You could be on a different planet, still relevant. And this is really key to us evolving, but it becomes a lifestyle without effort. That first push in effort to become objective about who you really are and what the inner world is actually playing out in your outer world, what that film is really all about, and you differentiating the voice and the feeling of your soul's voice and feeling inside of you versus anything else. that's going to be such a game changer, and you'll have such great breakthroughs even just doing that. The very first few days, you're going to have breakthroughs. Even the scientists that I worked with in college who started to learn this, immediately they began to have such a profound way of looking at the world. They were never the same. And that's what everybody's craving right now, is the simple things that they can do to become who they really are. And it's supposed to be effortless. It's what the difference. Doing is all the effort, right? You got to do a few things at first, but then it becomes effortless because your brain literally gets rewired to think like this. And then the rest of it comes into play, and it becomes really beautiful what you can see, what you can celebrate, and what you'll grieve and what you'll be sad and upset about too, because that's all valid. It's going to be sad to say, I'm willing to give up the doing that is my motherhood in order to be in my true mother self, in order to be the divine mother. I'm willing to give up what Elizabeth thought being a mother was, or doing motherhood was. That's what this takes. You're willing to give up the orientation from the 3D. You're willing to give up all your previous ideas about reality and start at your 0 point, which is you, your soul. And then everything else unfolds. And the pathway, the signs, the synchronicities begin to become very rich. That's one of the measurable results, is everything begins to synchronize. You'll see more patterns. You'll see the echoes. You'll say something, and then it'll occur in the 3D. And these are some of your measurable results that you'll perceive.
And I believe this is how you can recognize that you have really stepped into your I am.
Yes, that's right.
All these synchronicities and little beautiful miracles that happen, because they really sound and look like miracles, but they're synchronicities, and it's because the right steps have been taken and coming from this light.
That's right.
Yeah. And
because you're naturally, your light it wants to be synced back up with source as the whole. And that's when you're stepping into that, that's what you've initiated. And all those synchronies, yeah, it's going to be really fun. It can be pretty cool, and it can happen very quickly. So it's very cool to see those and to take note of them as well.
It was a wonderful process and very, very well explained. So everyone who wants to follow, the way you explain it, it's easy to follow it and do it. And the crucial thing, I think, is the taking responsibility for what's going on and for these reactions that we've got, and how these reactions are running our life path. And it's kind of empowering to see that we are responsible and that we're not the victims, so we can clear that and then become the more expansive being that we are.
That's right. And then your presence from your soul, it draws out the souls of others.
Yes.
It changes the physical and experiential based reality around you, so that you're not experiencing things the same way any longer, and neither is anybody else. So then when you go to your job, if that job is not going to continue to serve your soul's light, it will just naturally shift, but it'll shift into something much better. Perhaps you get promoted, perhaps you lose the job because you actually needed to break to be able to then move into a different place. But that divine trust that happens from the inside, it becomes really clear that all you have to do is wait with the intention, source, I'm still here. I'm still wanting to be one with you. I'm still this light that I am. And I'm going to let that light take action now. And I'm going to let that light think and speak through me now. And that will create a very different experience in reality that is far more appropriate and pure and will continue to elevate. And the people around you, they'll either be really destroyed by all of that light, because that light will show them all their stuff, and if they're willing to do the work, then the people around you become happier and better, and they become more of their soul too. And if they can't or they won't do the work, then they'll leave. And they'll go on and do whatever they want to do to stay comfortable, right? This is not a comfortable way of life at first, because a lot of things are going to have to change and your body has to change and heal. But it does become more comfortable. It becomes more obvious that you are the creator of this reality, that your attention is literally creating reality. And then everything else begins to change. I've done this process obviously myself, and I can say that within a very short time, I ended up divorced, but then the right exact perfect relationship came for myself and my ex. I ended up, or at least the lessons that my ex needed to learn about relationships got played out quite a bit. And then my children are much happier and healthier and better. My life in general, my work, all of these things, they all shifted and changed and became more in alignment with my light. And now I don't feel like I'm working at all of this anymore. I am literally being it. And that is such a precious way of living. And the synchronicities and the miracles are constant and they're every day. And it's always wonderful. It's so surprising and yet very, very expected eventually. But you never get tired of it because it creates constant pure joy to see all of these wonderful miracles happen around you, simply because you were willing to do this and take the effort and the time to do it. So if you do actually really, some people don't want to do this stuff for themselves, then do it for the people and the beings around you. And then you'll realize that you're not separate from them and that you're doing it for yourself and everyone else as well. This is a huge, powerful act in consciousness for you to become your true self and to be your light.
And then you naturally see the same in the others.
Yes, exactly.
You realize your place in the oneness and their place in the oneness.
That's right. And you draw that out. Yeah. And so then even if like you ended up divorced like myself, I'm still drawing the light out of my ex-husband, and he's becoming more and more himself at his own pace because of that presence, because the light naturally wants to connect to the light. Remember how source got dispersed into all these different wavelengths, but where are they all going? Always, they all go back home into oneness. And you can do it while you're alive, or you can do it when you check out of your body. Either way, we all end up going home.
We can keep talking.
We could.
It's a wonderful conversation, and thank you for sharing these personal experiences, because it's kind of going into your vulnerability as well, but literally demonstrating that leaving something behind is just the beginning of something new and better that is coming, and trust this process. Yes, because you have become more authentic, you are attracting more authentic people and circumstances. Exactly. So it looks traumatic probably in the first place, but eventually we see the other side, the other aspect of bringing something new and better.
So that's right. It can be at first very dramatic. That's true. At least not boring. But the dramas of it, they will reveal themselves as as incredibly important and fascinating moments. But yeah, that true authentic self, you feel really free, you feel lighter, you feel more expansive, you have access now. And hey, then from there, you really can go enjoy the fifth dimension. And you can do it from a real strong and powerful vantage point where you can utilize that fifth dimension for wonderful, even deeper self-inquiry. There's more along the way. Each dimension affords more deep self-inquiry and inquiry into source God. But start with your light. Start with the first dimension, and you can't go wrong.
Thank you. I think it's a kind of a good summary and finish of the conversation. And I don't want to forget to mention about your free gift that you for our viewers. Would you like to mention about it?
Yeah, so I wrote this ebook some years ago. Can't remember, I think it was like 2017. But it's all about the three minds, the brain, the heart, and the gut. And it's how to heal some traumas there. It's very important set of processes, and it helps you to recognize also the golden ratio in the body, which is how the human body works in physical reality. It's through the golden ratio. And so there's the healing of your mind and all the different ways you can catch some of these reactions and some of the pieces that you're going to want to keep noticing that are not really your soul's voice. And then how to heal your heart, and especially for the masculine, because the heart is the power center of the masculine. And then how to heal your gut and your root, because the gut is the discussion arena between you and earth. That's where the bacterium has quite the important counsel that helps dictate all sorts of things throughout every aspect of your body, including your brain. So how do you heal all these things? That book is it's a very jam-packed, sweet little book that's going to help you so much with great healing tools and special processes such as heart commands, for example, that will give you far more clarity and help you to do the things we've talked about today with much more ease. So I'm very glad to offer that as a gift.
Thank you. And I invite everyone to just find the link below this video and claim the gift, because it's really wonderful to know how our body operates and how we can benefit from what you're describing, all these processes of dealing with the mind, with the heart, and the gut. And anything else that you want to mention about how people can work with you? Because you're offering really powerful work.
Thank you. So my website is prismatichuman.com. And I'm teaching some very important classes these days about the 12 light bodies, but I have a lot of classes I've taught for a very long time. So some hundreds of classes and all subjects you could ever want. Everything from discernment to mysticism to healing to learning how to be a quantum healer, all kinds of things, psychic development, and just being a happier human, better communication, all of these things I care about a lot, healing the masculine and feminine. So all of that's there for you. And then being able to work with me in many capacities. There's lots of varieties of ways for us to play. And I've always tried to keep everything very affordable for people. So I hope people will come and join me and enjoy the different kinds of things that are available. It's quite the library available. I think that people will have fun sifting through that. And all the light is there too on the website as well. So you can enjoy it and have a nice treat of more light.
And your link is under this video as well. So please, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Elizabeth. And thank you very much, Elizabeth, for being here, for your time, for this incredible wisdom that comes kind of cosmic, galactic wisdom, cosmic wisdom. But it's obvious that you have embodied it you know, you have been through it, and it has value when you're sharing it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So bye for now, and bye everyone, and I hope I'll see you soon.